In this problem, we'll be doing order of operations that may include parentheses, brackets, multiplication, division, addition, and subtraction. And in these problems, you'll see me do whatever is inside the parentheses and brackets first. So for example, I see an operation of division and multiplication here. Normally we do it left to right, but before you do your multiplication and division, you take care of what's inside any parentheses or brackets first. So notice the 3 times 8 are in the parentheses, so this will be performed first. I'm just going to copy the 24 and the division symbol. And because 3 times 8 is 24, you write that down, and now the only thing left is to take 24 and divide by 24, which gives me an answer of 1. Now let's do a more complicated example. In this example, we have several parentheses, and we also have a bracket here and here. So regardless of what this operation is, parentheses and brackets come first. And when you perform them, you perform the innermost grouping symbol first. So for example, this bracket here and this bracket here have many operations inside them, so we will do all of what's in these brackets before we perform the subtraction out here. But inside those brackets, if you were just to focus your attention on this being the problem and ignore this for a second, you would notice that inside the brackets there's another set of grouping symbols here, which are parentheses. So these parentheses being inside the brackets will be done first, meaning the addition of the 2 and the negative 6 will be done first, then we'll work from there. So I'm going to start by just doing this part of the problem first and copy everything else. So I've copied the entire problem except for what's in these parentheses here. These parentheses say that I'm supposed to add the 2 and the negative 6 first. Doing so would give me a negative 4. Once I've done that, I now would continue the problem by noticing now that inside the brackets say we are to perform negative 8 subtract negative 4, so I will do that piece now. I'm just going to copy the negative 3 down, and I'm going to copy the subtract symbol. And you would think of the subtracting of a negative as being the same as adding a positive. So negative 8 subtract negative 4 is the same thing as negative 8 plus 4. Maybe I'll write that down here. So I changed the subtraction to addition and changed the sign on the negative 4 to positive 4. A negative 8 plus 4 is negative 4. So all of this comes out to be negative 4. It being negative, I'll put parentheses around it. So now when you see the directions that say parentheses come first, what they mean is to perform the operations inside them. So for example, inside of these parentheses, there are no operations inside. So the parentheses here are just to indicate that this symbol here is a negative symbol, not a subtraction symbol. It's just telling me that the sign on the 4 is negative. So now I only have one operation left. I am to take negative 3 and I am to subtract negative 4. So the operation here is subtraction. And again, you can change the subtraction to addition and then change the sign on the second number to positive 4. And finally, you'd have negative 3 plus 4, which gives us 1. And that would be my final answer. In this example, I first look for parentheses or brackets. I don't see any brackets, but I do see some parentheses. Remember that there's no operator inside this set of parentheses, so I won't be doing it first because there's nothing inside to do. This is simply a negative 3. So going out one more layer, because again, we always work inside first. If you have several parentheses or brackets, you do the innermost piece first, but there's nothing to do here. So going one layer out, I want to look at what's inside these parentheses, and these parentheses say I'm supposed to subtract. So I will copy everything else in the problem. We have the 8 times the 9, subtract 7, and these parentheses show implied multiplication between the 7 and what's going to be inside the parentheses. Well, what's going to be inside the parentheses is what I get when I take 2 and subtract negative 3. So 2 subtract negative 3 is the same thing as 2 being added to a positive 3, and 2 plus 3 is 5. So now I have the operation of multiplication here. I have a subtraction, but I also have implied multiplication between the 7 and the 5. So let me put a dot between them, and that would be a third operation I am to perform. Now you may argue that parentheses come first, but there's nothing to do inside the parentheses. In fact, the parentheses here are just to help show the implied multiplication. So I have two multiplications and a subtraction. I'm done with any parentheses. I move on to multiplication and division next. I will continue to do the problem from left to right, doing any multiplication or division before I move on to addition or subtraction. So I will start right here at 8 times 9, which is 72, and I will copy the rest of the problem. Looking from left to right, I look for the first multiplication or division symbol, and that's right here. And by the way, it would have been fine to leave the dot out of the problem as long as you know that 7 parentheses 5 means 7 times 5. That would have worked fine. So I'm going to copy the 72 and I'm going to copy the subtract symbol. 7 times 5 is 35. Now there's only one thing left to do, and that would be the subtraction. And it turns out 72 subtract 35 is 37. And there'd be nothing left to do, so that would be the end of my problem. Hopefully you found this video helpful.